I might restart my computer.
You're showing up again. Second time.
Okay. I'm gonna reboot.
Are you guys getting audio?
No, I have to reboot. We might start a little bit late, sorry. It's good. I launched them in here.
Pretty much.
I said it's me launch it again.
That's just a splash break.
Why? The hell? I didn't touch that.
You're transmitting your internal mic.
It beeps. Yeah, that's what I need to.
No, you're transmitting your voice right now. Sorry, I'm just gonna mute you again because that automatic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out today for a very special day. On behalf of the McCurdy family, I want to thank each and every one of you for attending today. We're celebrating the life of a very special person for all of us. The program will officially begin in a few moments. We're working through a couple of technical issues. So I'm just here to tell you that. And also to thank the musicians who played earlier. Bruce would have loved that. It was so beautiful. I walked in and I heard a rocking, brilliant version of Salisbury Hill, and I knew I was in the right spot. And we'll have more of that, obviously, and some great memories. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes, but we're taking care of a couple of issues. Thank you for your patience. It appears my little speech worked, and I wish I had that kind of impact on my children, but Once again, thank you for coming today to the Bruce McCurdy Celebration of Life, perfectly chosen venue. I want to welcome you. My name is Alan Mitchell, Low Tide. It's my honor to guide you through today's celebration. There's a few things we want to get out to you right away before we begin the official part of the program. There's a guest book. Please sign it if you haven't done so. It'll be brought up from the registration area downstairs. Make sure you sign that before you leave. We invite you to join us for some afternoon snack, the finger foods and beverages available after our formal program. It'll be available in the Space Gallery and the two learning rooms. The program is recorded, is being streamed through Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch links. The recordings will be available afterwards on those tech platforms. While you're in the Space Gallery, we invite you to view a short video of Bruce interviewing the farmer whose farm they found one of the Buzzard Coulee meteorites years ago. Sherilyn Jawring is opening up the public observatory adjacent to the main building after this afternoon's proceedings. That's depending upon the weather, which is a little up in the air. Feel free to check out the place where Bruce logged over 3,500 hours of volunteer time as a public interpreter. Yeah, amazing. It was a place that brought him great joy. And, if he were here, he'd insist you go, but we're just mildly suggesting. Donations in Bruce's name. We want to thank those people who have already made a donation to either the Ben Stelter Foundation, supporting children with childhood cancer, as well. The Stelter Foundation has raised money for a proton therapy machine. This machine was the first one available in Canada, or also to the Heart and Stroke Fund, those two charities particularly important to Bruce. The slideshow shown prior to the start of this afternoon's program are Bruce's photos that he's taken on his walks. He walked daily since March 2020 when COVID began. In the beginning, he'd walk 6 to 8 kilometers a day. In the last months of his life, he was still walking 5Ks daily. He kept the information about his walks on his phone, where he learned his green dot daily. Sometimes the technology failed, so he would just walk farther, so he got to the green dot. That's Bruce. The walks included all of the 60-plus trails in the St. Albert area, as well as many trails in Edmonton, Red Deer, Victoria, and the mountain parks of Alberta. Now, some thank yous. On behalf of the entire McCurdy family, thank you for the generosity so many people have made this possible, including all the people working here at the Science Center today. We appreciate how so many of you of the staff have pitched in to make this day a success, especially Frank Florian and Morgan Van Beek. We also want to thank our friends and family who've traveled from various distances to celebrate Bruce's life and legacy. A big thank you to all of you who contributed photos and helped arrange photos for the slideshow, especially Jamie Burns, Bruce's nephew. And thank you to our musical friends, Dale Ladisseur and Bob Jarig, for sharing their talents here this afternoon. Thank you to all the speakers who are about to present their memories and stories about Bruce. The McCurdy family has received so many kindnesses since Bruce left us, and thank you for your kind and caring support. We appreciate it very much. We hope this gathering will give you a glimpse of the many passions and talents that were part of Bruce. Bruce McCurdy approached life with a sense of wonder about all things. He had an amazing mind and a great memory, and used both the creative and the analytical, along with humor and goodness. He delighted in music, sports, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and shared those things with everyone he knew. That brought him many rewards, most especially Anna, the love of his life. Anna is seated over here. I don't know if you can see her very well, but she is waving. And Kevin, their son. Kevin is already standing up, or he's very tall, one of the two. Bruce and Anna were married 45 years in December. She met him while both were bowling at the U of A. Bruce was very good at it, and obviously he was very good at wooing Anna. And they spent many hours at concerts and WHA, then NHL Oilers games. And I will say, I'm 63. I've never met a man in my life who was more devoted to his family and to his wife and told more beautiful and loving stories about his family. It was touching. Long before I met Anna or Kevin, I felt I knew them very well because of Bruce and his enchanting stories about them and his positivity about them. I think there's a lesson for all of us to learn. Bruce's essays on the Edmonton Oilers stand as both brilliant reflection and a chronicle of a most interesting era in Oilers history. I always thought he should have been the Oilers' official historian. He was meticulous in his coverage of the team. His post-game reviews in the Cult of Hockey at the Edmonton Journal were the best summaries I've ever read. And a lot of people have said exactly those words. They were creative, flawless, precise, and all of those things were Bruce. Bruce was a great guy. My friend Darcy called him a sweet fellow once when we were having scotch. And I always remember that because guys just don't talk like that about other guys. But Bruce, if you knew him, he gave you a roadmap on a successful life, a happy life, and a good life. Love your people, be truthful, be sincere, and get it right. I loved him, and I always will. It's my pleasure today to introduce Bruce's siblings one by one. Each is going to come up and say a few words. So this is not in alphabetical order, but we're going to call on the doctor first. Dr. Margaret Mackey, if you can join us and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely reflection on Bruce. And you will all understand if I say I wish I weren't here, but I do have a few things to say, just 3 of them, and they're all very short and very simple. I was nearly 7 years old when Bruce was born, and I vividly recall my friend's mother coming from the phone into their kitchen to tell me that I had a new little brother. He was his own person straight away, a mischievous and energetic and occasionally aggravating little rascal from the get-go. He was also, and this is profoundly true, it sounds like a cliche, but it isn't. He was a deeply lovable and loving human being from his very earliest months. That lovely little boy grew up to be an exceptional man with a broad range of interests. And the second thing I want to say is to acknowledge the degree to which Anna's steadfast support made it possible for him to be the best person he could be. I know he would be the first to give her full credit for her unwavering encouragement over the years. Our parents always appreciated their devoted and reciprocal teamwork, and we do too. So thank you, Anna, for all those good years, the thick and thin of it. Thank you to Kevin for the boundless joy you gave your dad from your birth onwards, and to Rose for coming into the family and enhancing it. All 3 of you have our most heartfelt gratitude for the heroic manner in which you've stepped up in so many different ways in the before times, but even more especially since Bruce died. You've honored him even among your own shock and devastation, and he would be very proud of what you've done. Finally, I want to offer 2 lines of poetry and tell you a very small story. After her death, Ted Hughes wrote a book of poems to his estranged wife, Sylvia Plath, and he sums up the world of joint memories that shrinks when one of the participants dies. He says it very simply. Remember how we picked the daffodils? Nobody else remembers, but I remember. A brother and sister can also share an intense experience, which is just what Bruce and I did on the morning of Christmas Eve, 1968. He was 13 and I was 20. We had driven downtown together to run a few last-minute errands on Water Street in St. John's. As we walked from the parking space towards the shops, we discovered that the big front window of Bowering's department store had one of those vertical displays of dozens of television sets, and they were in color, which was still unusual in those days. Every single screen was showing the same revolutionary image. Oh, and you'll see it up in the slide there. The photograph not of a sunrise nor of a moonrise, but of Earth rising, taken from space and sent back to an astonished home planet. Like many boys of his age in that era, Bruce was already fascinated by the adventures and the technologies embodied in the space program. But this picture captivated his imagination and his heart in a completely different way. Most of you here will know of his great love and reverence for the wonders of the skies. The image of Earth hanging in space, so new and startling to us in 1968, was one launch pad for this lifelong passion. We stood in front of that window for a long time, and the boy who returned home was not quite the same person as the kid who set out that Christmas Eve morning. For more than 56 years, Bruce and I recalled this experience together. Our individual sets of particular details may have varied slightly, but now you have only my version. Now I remember that awestruck moment for the two of us, and thus I look back on life with my brother, and I am thankful both for the single dazzling image and for Bruce's entire rich existence, both before and after our experience with it. We're all better for having known him. My own family is exceedingly grateful for what he's given us. For me, the great gift of that relationship lasted from the birth announcement in the Moore's family kitchen right up to Bruce's death at the end of the Vegas game in April. It's impossible for me to express all the positive elements he added to our lives, but I thank him for every bit of it. Being his sister has always been, as it remains today, an enormous privilege. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Some of us remember that photo. Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Next is Mr. Earl McCurdy to speak about his kid brother. Earl?
Thank you very much, Alan, and thanks to everyone for being here. I live in Newfoundland, so I had a bit of a distance to go, but I'm certainly glad to be here. In a way, I wish I didn't have to be, but here I am. I was absolutely blown away by the response to Bruce's untimely death when I followed it on social media. Just the sheer volume and the heartfelt nature of the responses. And in particular, I was struck by how many people referred to Bruce's kindness, which I think was an attribute that he displayed his whole life. I'd like to second Margaret's comments about Anna and Kevin and Rose, and I know just how proud Bruce was of Kevin all his life, and how much he depended on Anna as a kind of the rock on which his life was built. I'd like to mostly talk about little Bruce, because there's plenty of you here who kind of know big Bruce, but not many who would have known little Bruce. Bruce was a great kid brother. As a small child, he was a real handful. He was an accomplished climber and a bold adventurer. In fact, the picture on the handout where he's got that triumphant grin on his face, it was taken just after he, after a number of attempts, succeeded in climbing up on my mother's sewing table. Our yard was fenced, but additional security was required for Bruce that wasn't needed for the rest of us, and he had a harness attached to him, and he was tethered by a length of clothesline to the fence. Nonetheless, he escaped on one occasion and got lost, and we had to invoke the assistance of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary to track him down. When Bruce was 7, we got our first family dog, a lovely female we call Lady. Our parents made it clear on Lady's first night in the house that she was not to sleep on Bruce's bed. Her bed was to be a sheet of cardboard on the floor behind the furnace. Before they went to bed themselves, our parents went down to the basement to see how things were going. And as per instructions, Lady was asleep on the cardboard on the floor. So was Bruce, with his arm around the dog. My parents knew a losing battle when they saw one, and thereafter, Bruce and Lady slept together on the bed. If I were to name a single characteristic that defined Bruce's life, I think it would be curiosity. And he was like that from an early age. And that manifested itself in his interest about the natural world, mathematics, science, and of course, astronomy. You sometimes hear of a person as having an encyclopedic memory. Well, Bruce could go toe-to-toe with the internet. No detail was too small. I was very fortunate to get one last visit with Bruce this past winter. So naturally, we got to reminiscing about, our years growing up. We recalled Lady's multiple litters of puppies, totaling 18. And those who know Bruce will not be at all surprised to know that he was able to name all 18 of those puppies 50 years later and sort them by litter. No detail was too small, even if it had to be retained for half a century. Bruce and I last lived in the same province in 1971. In the intervening years, we've been far apart and close together at the same time. Rarely would a week go by where we didn't speak by phone, usually for an hour or so. I loved him for all 69 of his years, and I miss him dearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Errol. And finally, Mrs. Jem Horwood, please.
Hello, my name is Jem Horwood. I'm the younger sister of Bruce McCurdy, born when he was 10 years old. He was my closest sibling in age. There were 5 of us, but for many years after we moved to Edmonton when I was 5 years old, he was the only one I lived with, the one I grew up jostling and rubbing elbows with. Bruce was, as you can imagine, an excellent big brother. After the move, when we were both feeling the loss of a house full of siblings, we turned to each other for endless hours of playing, hanging out, and growing together. Although he must sometimes have felt that a much younger, dull-playing sister was no match for a house full of hockey-watching boys, he never communicated that to me. Shortly after we moved, when I was 6, I began group piano lessons. I came home from the second one, proud that I'd learned 3 notes going up, down with my left hand to mirror the 3 right-hand notes I had learned the week before. Bruce responded me by showing me how to bypass learning 1 note at a time and just learn how the system worked. He showed me how the notes worked on the staff, that the pattern I had begun just kept going right to the top and bottom. I went to my 3rd group piano lesson, having mastered the second last song in the book. Not the last, because I thought the second last was the most beautiful piece ever written. The book was supposed to last the year, so my teacher was perhaps less appreciative of Bruce's methods than I was. When I was 9 and Bruce was 19, our middle brother David was killed in a car accident. That moment instantly changed the lives of everyone in our family, including Bruce and me. Together, we watched my parents struggle with this greatest of all losses, day after day. We both learned not to talk too much about our own experience in order to protect them. But over time, we began to share some of that with each other. Bruce was the only person besides my mother that I talked to about David for many years. Bruce was always and unquestionably my ally, one of the most deeply accepting and loyal human beings I've ever known. When I was struggling in school or with friends, he was there, letting me know he was on my side. His nickname for me was 8 Ball, and I knew that 8 was his favorite number. He bought me a pin, which I meant to bring but accidentally left in my jewelry box in Victoria, that said, "I'm behind the 8 Ball." On a boring Valentine's Day on which I was feeling somewhat unnoticed and unloved, I felt something on my head and reached up to find a red satin heart-shaped box of chocolates, and my brother standing there with a goofy grin just for me. Bruce's room in our family basement was my safe place. We spent hours upon endless hours playing fish and crazy eights with up to 4 decks of cards at a time, while listening to his extensive music collection and talking about every subject under the sun, from the most in-depth to the most mundane. In my teens, I became fascinated with patterns and fractals in nature. This started an ongoing to the end discussion about the coexistence of religious beliefs and science. Over the years, I moved from trying to understand how they could work together to moving away from organized religion towards personal spiritual beliefs that sync with nature and science. No matter where I was along that path, Bruce took me seriously and helped me find ways to look at the world that made sense. He shared his own views too, but I think was also conscious that he was older and therefore needed not to influence me in any particular direction. If this sounds like we were all serious all the time, that couldn't be further from the truth. From the considered analysis and rating of dessert every day, chocolate sauce won because sometimes it hardened to form cool cave-like structures when the ice cream melted away underneath. To slow races with glasses of Tang, which for years I always lost because I couldn't comprehend a slow race. To crokinole and board games and Nerf football and always more card games. Life with Bruce was usually fun and always interesting. He got me through math throughout junior high and high school in marathon slog sessions the weekend before the exam. Of course, he wasn't perfect. I remember coming home jubilant that I had scored 94% on a math exam in a class I'd been failing the week before. Bruce's enraging answer was, "What happened to the other 6? Another aspect I want to touch on is Bruce's gift to music. In all the wonderful things I've read about him since his death, this aspect is rarely mentioned. Bruce had 3 careers, one in math, one in astronomy, and one in hockey writing. But it is my belief that he could have easily had a 4th, a musical career. He had, as you might expect, an encyclopedic knowledge of the many genres that interested him, and he also could hear everything. My own career has been in music, so I say that with a certain amount of expertise. He really was a Renaissance man with a multiplicity of deep, cultivable talents. When I was 14, Bruce moved out. Soon he paired up with Anna, the love of his life. When they had Kevin, his deep joy was evident to all. We raised our children together, and my brother continued to enrich my life, from taking classes together in hand drumming, to attending Ragamella concerts, to bringing his telescope to our housewarming party. He brought our family to this very center every year, a rare and exciting outing for my children, and he presented the unit on the solar system to my son's grade 6 class, getting the kids to string out rolls of toilet paper to demonstrate the distances between the sun and the planets. In closing, I would like to say to Anna and Kevin that the two of you made my beloved brother happy all the days of his life. I am so thankful that you were the faces he gazed upon and loved right up to the very end. As for myself, when I visit those deep places inside myself, I feel music and see stars. For that, for my beautiful brother, I am profoundly grateful.
Thanks so much to each of you. I've known Bruce a lot of years. There's a lot of funny and beautiful things that you said that I didn't know. So we really appreciate what you told us and the feelings that you shared. And obviously it's a difficult time, but those were beautiful memories. And thank you for sharing. Next up, we have a musical piece by Dale Ladisseur. I've been told that there may be a need to sing the chorus, so I hope you're ready for that.
Apologies for the lull. I normally stand when I perform. I just had knee surgery, so I am really grateful for the talks. I just learned and get a little closer to Bruce with all of those lovely words, and it's very interesting that his baby sister used the word Renaissance man because that's in the chorus. So it must be true. Now, dear Frank, who has been, you've had so much going on this weekend, and he agreed to put up the chorus so that everyone could sing along near the end. It's going to be in the last. It's going to be in the last couple of go-rounds, but feel free, if you feel like singing, please join in. I would love that, because we're all friends of Bruce. Sorry. When I first met Bruce, with his Bruce warmth and his Bruce smile, something told me be friends for more than a little while. When I first met Bruce, surrounded by a crowd, outstanding in his field in so many ways that I know, my mom and I had come to see some celestial divine comet, an eclipse, or was it Shoemaker leaving 9? My friend Bruce, a Renaissance man, quietly observing, sharing what he can. Loving science, loving art, loving hockey, loving family, rolled into one big, beautiful heart. So many years of coming out to gigs with learned friends in tow. When I would see Sitting down, I feel so much better about the show because I knew someone was listening and not just having a beer with it. I felt so blessed to have a friend showing to the audience. My friend Bruce, a Renaissance man, quietly observing, sharing what he can. Loving science, loving art, loving hockey, loving family, rolled into one big, beautiful heart. Every person here has a little piece of this masterpiece. Every person here attesting to the lives he reached. Because all of this paints a picture of a life so varied, a life so vast, a life so full, a life well lived, gifting memories to my friend, a Renaissance man, quietly observing, sharing what he can. Loving science, loving art, loving hockey, loving family, rolled into one big, beautiful heart. One more time. My friend, a Renaissance man, quietly observing, sharing what he can. Oh, loving science, loving art, loving hockey, loving family, rolled into one big, beautiful heart. Loving friends and loving family, rolled into.
Dale, that was amazing. That was incredible. I mean, I like that better than Salisbury Hill, and I really like Salisbury Hill. That was gorgeous. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. What a beautiful song. We have a few more folks who want to come up, and just so you know, Kevin's going to say a few words at the end, and I have some words from Fred as well, all the way from Newfoundland. But there will be an opportunity, if you wish, to come up and say a few words a little bit later on in the program. Up next, longtime friend, also groomsman at Bruce and Anna's wedding, Bruce Dean, is going to speak about Bruce's high school 1972 physics story, which sounds interesting.
You all disappeared. I can't see you. Bruce had an annoying way of stating the obvious. I was right, wasn't I? Told you so. Indeed, he always seemed to be right. That steel trap of the memory would never fail him. It was not only what he said, but how he said it. It was the playful arrogance of an argument won. I loved playing this game, even though my wins were as frequent as an elk in green and gold. We first met on a high school football field as we tended the yardsticks at a game at Renfrew Park. Soon I was going over to his house after school. I learned much from being in his home. His parents were excellent role models. Fresh bread and strawberry jam was part of that experience as well. I knew that I was accepted there when they nicknamed me Dino. I don't think Bruce too would have sufficed. What Bruce and I liked to do the most was to cross the street into Lansdowne Park and toss the ball around. First, it was the Spalding CFL ball, the wider circumference, not that gimpy little NFL football. Then we gave in and got a Kenny Stabler NFL version. The baseball, however, was more conducive to conversation, and we had long talks while politely tossing it back and forth. It was never a competition. One evening, the sun was going down, as was our habit. So football passes took on more of an arc. We would drop those passes in under the streetlights with Tom Wilkinson precision, but a Bruce Limmerman spiral. Across 122nd Street, the U of A was building the Galbraith House at the married student housing at Mitchner Park. The sparks from an ironworker grinding and welding produced a stream of sparks that cascaded down the exposed skeleton of the building. It was magical. I thought it was just one of the best nights of my life. So while pondering these last few weeks, those sparks were like stars, transformed like a Disney sequence or a star theater. The football shuttled between the heavens and the earth. It was Bruce between his passions. The universe and his friends. It's a safe reception of the ball represented the unbreakable bond that young men forge. Now why you all come? Mr. Sprysack is not a name you brought up in Bruce's company. He was Bruce's grade 12 physics teacher who refused to postpone a physics exam on September 28, 1972. Everyone else in the school had a TV in their classroom. We all were watching Game 8 of the Summit Series between Russia and Canada, except Bruce and his classmates. At the bell, Bruce and I peeled over to my house, where we watched the last period as sports history unfolded. And I wonder to this day if those two bumps in our ceiling are still there after our heads hit when Henderson got the goal. Now we're all disappointed that Bruce didn't get that sixth cup. But I want to tell you a story how he has a fingernail on 3 other Stanley Cups. It started when we coached Little League baseball team of 10 to 12-year-olds. We were able to protect a player in the 5th round of that year's draft because he had a brother already with us. The little guy was a born athlete. He was our best pitcher because he could consistently put the ball in the strike zone, even though he was the youngest player on the team. Well, that little southpaw grew up to be a not-so-little defenseman for the New Jersey Devils and Danico. We shared the joy each time he lifted the cup, knowing that he had achieved great heights in spite of us. Here's a quick synopsis of what two young men did in our time together. Basement table tennis, epic APA baseball board games. Some went to 3 o'clock in the morning. It was amazing. Coaching community league hockey and baseball teams, high school band where he played sousaphone next to my other best friend, Dieter Brunch. Notes, if you're looking for a best friend, check out the sousaphone section. We attended the following concerts together: Jethro Tull, Chicago, Supertramp, and The Who. He invited me to come to the Procol Harum concert with the ESO. I declined and regretted it for the rest of my life. I'm positive that one of those woots after Conquistador in that famous recording is Bruce. We attended the 1974 Grey Cup together in Vancouver. The U of A Bowling Club was an important social outlet for us. And Bruce finally bowled his perfect game when he got Anna. And as already mentioned, we were in each other's wedding parties. One night, while we were witnessing Barris and the Bears march towards the National University Hockey Championship, it's a lot easier practicing in the bathroom. The public address system called Bruce for an important message. It was the night that he found that his brother David was out. Bruce was there for me when I buried my father when I was 20. I am here for you today. The loss of a friend cuts one's memory in half. How many times have you thought over these past couple of months, I should ask Bruce about that? Or I wonder if he remembers. Of course he would have. But I want you to celebrate indeed, but mourn well. Celebration and lament can coexist. Bruce and I never crossed swords. There was never an issue that could end this friendship. Last summer, I felt an urgency to break the ice and see Bruce after many years of being apart. As I was leaving, I hugged him, and with tears, I told him that he was my best friend ever, and that I loved him. I'm so grateful I answered that impulse. We have inherited what he earned from his investment in friendship and decency, a dividend that we may continue to draw upon while we follow his example, investing in others. Now, the end of my speech is interactive, just like the song was. I want you, if you loved Bruce, to repeat after me. We love you. We were right. Weren't we? Told you so. I yield my time.
Oh, I know.
So I thought he took part of my gram, but he didn't. I enjoyed that very much. Wonderful, wonderful memories of a great guy. Up next, we have Dr. Douglas Hube, who will speak about Bruce and some of his astronomical experiences.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking Anna for the opportunity to speak this afternoon about Bruce, a man who made an impact on many people, as is demonstrated by the large number who are here this afternoon. Bruce had, I originally said 5, but I think we'll say several great loves. Anna, Kevin, his wider family, hockey, and astronomy, plus all of you. We know that his contributions to hockey and to astronomy resulted in many friendships and earned him much affection and respect. Bruce was a gentleman and a gentleman. Never in my life, never in my presence did he raise his voice to make a point. Over the last few days, before thinking about what I would talk about, I took the opportunity to look at some of the old recordings of the Cult of Hockey programs. And although he never raised his voice in my presence, during those sessions, there were certainly a few rather firm and pithy comments that were directed toward officiating and toward the upper echelons of the NHL's administration. We all have limits in tolerance. This quiet, calm, and self-effacing man had an inquiring, logical, and analytical mind that allowed him to articulate learned opinions about his beloved Oilers, as well as about the complexities of planetary motions. I envied Bruce that his love of astronomy came not from formal education and training, but from his personal exploration and discovery of the subject. That made him an outstanding educator and writer. His presentations to the general public at the Science Centre where we stand today, and his publications in the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada contributed immensely to the scientific education of literally thousands of people, including me. Bruce McCurdy never sought the limelight, but it found him. The value of Bruce's words and writings and the strengths of his many friendships will long be treasured by all of us. Miss you very much, Bruce. Thank you.
Up next, we have Best Man at Bruce and Anna's wedding. Longtime friend Richard Ferguson. Share a memory or two.
Too many little people around here. So thank you, everyone. I'm grateful to be here. Let's share a little bit of my journey with Bruce, and that we first met him in the University of Alberta Bowling Club, and I think it was 1975. And the year before, I had bowled with his brother David. And you couldn't see two completely different people. David was like an angry machine up on the bowling lanes, and Bruce was nice, smooth, calm, easygoing, could care less. But he was very good at it, as he's been very good at everything he's ever done. And he had that 1 year university, and then after that, he started working at the Bank of Commerce. And we started just kind of, I had to quit drinking alcohol, caffeine, because I was designated with an ulcer, and I quickly found out who my true friends were. And so I just found new friends, and one of the new friends I found was Bruce. Bruce was not a big drinker. He might have a drink here and then. And we started gathering together. And we'd get together on a Friday night after work, and he'd come over to my place, and we'd play backgammon for a couple hours, go across the street, have a pizza, come back, and we play for another 3 or 4 hours before he'd head for home. And this went on for a little while, and then there was this young lady that came into our life through the University of Alberta Bowling Club called Anna Bellamy. And the three of us started getting together. Every weekend we'd get together. And a little while later on, Bruce phoned me one day and he said, I'm thinking of moving away from home. How would you like to be my roommate? And I said, yeah, I'd do that. And he said, well, only one thing, I don't know how to cook. And I said, well, do you know how to read? I said, yeah. And I said, if you know how to read, you know how to cook. So then shortly after, we found a place in the new fledgling community called Millwoods. We've got a 2-bedroom apartment, and Bruce had invited his family over for dinner. So being a consummate night's roommate, I left and didn't come back home till after 8 o'clock at night when I figured they'd be done. And I got home and there's a big pot of salted cod on the stove. And I thought, oh, well, we'll try this. That was my first mistake. It was like taking a box of Windsor salt, opening it up and pouring it down my throat. It didn't stay in my mouth very long. It was on the plate in the garbage very quickly. We fortunately did not do that kind of cooking afterwards. We now about 6 months into our lease, Bruce informed me, well, I've had enough of you being my roommate. I think I'm going to move in with Anna. And we continued getting together and doing things. One day Bruce phoned me and said, well, we're going to get married. How'd you like to be my best man? And I'd be honored. It was my privilege. We were pretty close friends. And they were living in a tower at that time. And eventually they bought a house out in Westmount. And another friend joined us named Brian Cruz. And the four of us would get together every weekend. We'd go for dinner or we'd do a barbecue and we'd start playing games. And after about a year or so, Anna said to me, well, I hope you don't mind, but I invited my best friend to join us. She knows me from the U of A Bowling Club. Her name is Val Ling, and I'm going, Val Ling? I know no Val Ling. So Val and her husband showed up, and turns out I did know Val Ling. Only I knew her as Val Minkler. So the six of us, we continued to get together. We'd play cards till early hours in the morning or board games. And then along comes Kevin, and shortly after that, along came Ariana and then Elizabeth. So we became a very large, extended family, very close family, gathering all the times. And through all that time, we started going to Golden Bear hockey games, Golden Bear football games. And usually when they were playing hockey, there was a basketball game going on at the same time, and we'd switch back and forth between the two and watch them. And Bruce would remember everything. And I can remember Randy Gregg's son was playing on the same hockey team as Kevin was playing one time, and I was there. And Bruce said, Randy, do you remember when you scored the goal to win this game? And Randy looked at him and said, no, Bruce, I don't remember that. Bruce forgets that, Randy was in medicine. He didn't have time to remember anything. He had to go back to school right away. Medicine was very important to Randy. But Bruce had such a phenomenal memory, and he could remember so many things. And many of you, if you didn't hear him, he had a really awesome voice for singing. He was a very consummate musician, very good at whatever he tried. And I valued all my time with him. It's so much that I learned from him. And I appreciated all of it. He was a very, very good friend. And our paths, we kind of separated, going different ways. I went on my spiritual path, and Bruce followed more in his hockey. But we'd stay in touch. I'd text him back and forth. The last text I shared with him was first game that Jones and Wallman played for the Oilers, and they laid a hellacious hit on Mikko Rantanen, and I sent a text saying, wow, where did this come from? And his response is, well, they're new to the team and they don't know the Oilers system yet. And I said, oh, you mean the one no-hit policy? Exactly. So, and in this past year, I've lost two men in my life that were very special men to me. One was my cousin. I was down to Pinoca for his 80th birthday in November, and we agreed we'd get together in early January, February, go for lunch. I'd go down to Pinoca and we'd go for lunch. Unfortunately, I had cataract surgery in December. And so in January, my eyes were still not quite accustomed to driving on the highway with the glare. So I never made it down. And early February, got a call saying he was in palliative care. And 2 weeks later, he was gone. In December, I had texted back and forth with Bruce, let's get together early in the new year. Let's go for lunch. And we kind of got busy doing things, and we ended up not going for lunch. And then he was gone. So I urge you, if you're thinking of someone, phone them. If you want to go for lunch or tea or coffee, take the initiative and go. Don't wait for them to do it. Take the initiative and go. You won't regret it, because I regret there's 2 opportunities I had to share with 2 very special people that I missed out on because I just was waiting for them and waiting for the right opportunity. And so I urge you, if you get the chance, do it. Don't sit and wait. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Talk about Bruce's memory. Sometimes it could bite you. Just having lunch with him a few years ago, well, probably 10 years ago. And I said, when I was like 10 or 11, the Montreal Canadiens ruined my life. They Boston Bruins were up big in the second period of a playoff game, and they came back and scored and scored and scored, and Bruins lost that game and lost the series. And he said, April 8th, 1971. And I went, you're kidding. And he goes, nope, John Beliveau scored a hat trick. And I'm like, Bruce, I'm trying not to relive this memory. That's the way he was. Alistair Ling is currently in Africa sharing the southern skies of Namibia. He shared the original version of RSC April meeting and a tribute to Bruce. We have an MP4 video of Alistair Ling.
Ocean depths or skies above you, nevermore. across the river, across the river, across the river I go. Across the river I go.
Speak about working and Bruce as a writer and podcaster with the Cult of Hockey. I hope this is a long one because there's a lot to talk about. David Staples.
First of all, thanks, Anna and Kevin, for honoring me with this opportunity to talk about Bruce. I know Bruce through a shared passion for understanding hockey and all things Edmonton Oilers. Many of you know him that way. Some of you from our Cult of Hockey podcast. It was just me and Bruce, two old fans, talking Oilers hockey. But it became more than that for many people who reached out to us from Edmonton and around the world. It was a way for them to connect with us, but also with the city and with hockey, an activity central to their own lives, their childhood, their memories, their discussions with their father or friends about Rusty Patnaud or Al Hamilton, Wayne Gretzky or Mark Messier. It brought us all together, but especially brought them to Bruce with his near perfect and encyclopedic memory of all things Oilers. In remembering Bruce today, I think it's fitting then that I now do what we did after every Oilers game for almost a decade. 2 good things, 2 bad things, and 2 numbers about Bruce Jefferson McCurdy. Good thing number 1, Bruce's love of beauty. On his Twitter bio, Bruce described himself as a lover of the sciences, arts, and sports. What tied all of that together, I think, was Bruce's gratitude and admiration for beauty. He spent his mornings reading the beautiful words of great authors and listening to the most beautiful compositions of musical greats. He spent his afternoons on long walks, taking photos to share small animals and gorgeous plants. He spent his evenings yearning for the Oilers to execute a great and beautiful play. and his nights staring into the infinite heavens of stars and stardust. Without its wicked shots and clever passes, its intricate combination plays and mesmerizing patterns, I don't think hockey would have held Bruce's attention. But how could it not? From Gretzky to Curry, from McDavid to Draisaitl, Bruce thrilled to the majestic plays of the world's best players. And don't you dare attack one of these players for their defensive mistakes, not when Bruce McCurdy was around. For Bruce, the sum of their gorgeous plays was like a mountain to an anthill when it came to their defensive foibles. That's what hooked him on hockey and kept him there. All these small, discrete moments, the thousands of crisp passes and top shelf shots, because, as a poet once said, in the dew of little things, Bruce's heart found its morning and was refreshed. The second good thing, Bruce's perspective on life, that we should conduct ourselves with great care and admirable restraint when it came to forming and sharing opinions, and that all conclusions should be set in a foundation of fairness and accuracy. This is what first drew me to Bruce. In a hockey world where half the fan base thinks they can do a better job than the GM, and the other half thinks it could outcoach the coach, Bruce held no such conceits. He rarely criticized the GM or the coach. His goal, he said, was to try to follow their thinking, to try to understand where they were going. This restraint set him apart, and in a good way, in the overheated, super-saturated hothouse world of online Oilers commentary. Where others provided cheap shots, venom, and hot takes, Bruce provided insight, understanding, and grace. Of course, Bruce and I did rate and rank the players. We did it with focus, grading not only every game, but every player in every game, and also every shot and every player's action on every shot. Every night we were in constant communication with each other, working on the same grade A shots document, debating back and forth who helped create each shot and who made mistakes on each shot against. We did this for two reasons. First, so that in our own rating and ranking of players, we could be fair to them. If we were going to blast or praise their play, we'd have good reason. Second, we both hungered to understand this lightning bolt of a game that unfolds and comes to a climax before you can comprehend what you've seen. Through slow motion video review over many years of study, some of the secrets of the game became known to us, and that was deeply satisfying to Bruce and to me. Such was Bruce's skill at the numbers part of hockey that when Kevin Lowe and Steve Tambellini of the Edmonton Oilers first put together an analytics committee to get their own read on this new form of hockey analysis, they asked Bruce to join. Now the bad things. Number one, this first bad thing was only bad in the moment, and it was only bad to any blustering big mouth who came unprepared for an argument, who came with lazy reasoning, flabby thinking, or a flawed interpretation of hockey analytics. Now, Bruce, he did suffer fools. He had patience. He never beat up on anyone verbally. He was never one for cheap shots or personal attacks, but man alive, he would grind you down if you were wrong. He was on you like Mark Messier on the forecheck, pounding you with facts, pummeling you with logic. I admit it. It could feel like a bad thing in the moment of debate, but over time, as I thought through Bruce's positions, there was always some important insight to be gleaned. Many of you in the audience have been on the receiving end of an all-out Bruce McCurdy rhetorical body check, I'm sure. I certainly had my moments, so much so that often when I came to consider my own opinions on plays and players, I would reflexively think, I wonder what Bruce thinks. The other bad thing, you know what it is. We lost Bruce too soon. We weren't ready for it. It still hurts like hell. It still feels unreal and incomprehensible. But it is a fact, he's gone. And all we can do is to try to find solace in our memories. And again, I'm reminded of what a poet once said about solace. Quote, "For that which you love most in him may be clear in his absence, as the mountain to the climber is clear from the plain." Numbers. The first number is 18. Hockey is winning or misery. And there's been no shortage of misery for Oilers fans. But as a fan of the game, Bruce knew the ecstasy of victory at least 19 times by my count. 4 Stanley Cup wins for the beloved Toronto Maple Leafs of his youth, 5 Cup wins for the Oilers of his adulthood, and by my count, at least 9 huge wins for Team Canada in best-on-best international tournaments. Most recently, Connor McDavid scoring the winning goal over the Kachuk brothers, Team USA, at the Four Nations tournament. I'm glad that Bruce got to see that last win, the first significant championship, team championship in Connor McDavid's pro career, but not the last. My second number, infinity. Now, I have a sense just now that Bruce, looking over my shoulder, might object to this. Technically, infinity is not a number in the standard framework, you might say. It's a concept representing something without limit or bound. Okay, Bruce, I got it. You are right. But humor me just now because when it comes to you, infinity is on my mind. Infinity was Bruce's obsession. Infinite combinations of plays on ice, the infinite stardust and complexity of the universe, the infinite stars in the sky, infinite time before us, infinite time after us, the time we had together. And now, one last time, signing off. In the meantime, and in between time, and until we meet again, Bruce McCurdy, now in the Hall of our Fathers, receiving a toast from the hockey gourds. This has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey, the one that breaks my heart, but fills me with gratitude. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Up next, an individual who I had the opportunity to have breakfast with Bruce and Lynn many times. Some of my favorite memories. We would talk about hockey, obviously, and music as well. And Lynn was, and Bruce were great company at mostly Socrates, and she's a very fine individual and a friend of mine, Lynn Mercereau.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lynn Mercereau, and I was very lucky to call Bruce my friend. Bruce and I became friends the way so many do nowadays through social media, but it was more than just an online friendship. We shared a love of all things curling, with me steadfast in my belief that Nicholas Edin is the best curler of all time, and Bruce with his devotion to the best curler Canada has ever produced in Brad Gushue. We were lucky enough to see these two teams play each other in person this past November. But what I would really love for you to know is that when Nick Adine was on TV and I couldn't watch due to other commitments, Bruce would message me with updates of every shot, describing each shot like only he could, bringing it to life for me when I couldn't see it with my own eyes because he knew how important it was to me. We spent hours and hours talking about music. We introduced each other to new things and helped each other develop a deeper appreciation for acts we were already familiar with. Through Bruce, my admiration for David Byrne grew deeper, and I dragged him into my Foo Fighters obsession. When it came to matters of social justice, Bruce always seemed to be able to find the right words to say when I felt like words weren't enough. His capacity to want the best for everyone made him a giant in my mind. He cheered on the volunteer work I did and encouraged the ideas I had when it came to trying to give back to my community. Last fall, when my mom had a stroke, Bruce realized early on that the pressure of caregiving may be affecting my own health and gently checked in with me, always mindful of the stress I was under and worried for me. For a couple of seasons, Bruce and I had a mini pack together for the Oilers with his friend Bill Patrick. He walked me to my car after every game, and when I asked him one night why he did that, he said that his sweet Anna would be so upset with him for letting me walk to my car alone at night. Every day with Bruce in it was a gift to me. Anna, Kevin, and Rose, I'll never be able to thank you enough for sharing him with me. I will miss him forever and remember him with love. I spent some time searching for a quote to describe how Bruce has inspired me, and this is the one I kept circling back to. Every choice that we make can be a celebration of the world we want to live in. Bruce, my sweet friend, you will always be with me, like a handprint on my heart.
Thank you, Lynn. Lynn was witness to one of the few true disagreements that Bruce and I ever had. We were at the Socrates restaurant at a breakfast, and we were talking about Genesis. And Bruce and I both preferred the Genesis Peter Gabriel, Watcher of the Skies Genesis. But I really liked the Genesis with the three. And Bruce called them a stub. Does anybody here have any idea how many records Genesis with Phil Collins as the lead singer sold? And he called them a stub. But in Bruce's mind, the Genesis with Peter Gabriel was the ultimate, and well, nothing else would do. So he won that one too. Coming up next, I'm looking forward to this, a slideshow, Bruce's life in photographs.
thy white dress, golden nets and gold salmons, chimney sweepers come to dust, the scepter learning physic must. All follow these and come to dust. Fear no more the frown of the great. Thou art blessed, the tyrant strong. Care no more to clothe and to heed. To thee the reed, for reed is as the oak. The scepter running physic must. All follow this and come to dust. Oh, lovers young, our lovers must consign to thee and come to
There's blood in the dust where the city's heart beats. The children play games that they take from the streets. How can you teach when you've so much to learn? May you turn. 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 May you turn in your grave. You There is hate in your eyes, I have seen it before. Planning destruction behind a locked door. Were you the coward who fired the last shot? May you rot! 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 May you rot in your grave! sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
That was beautiful. Bruce in a suit was interesting. Been a while, I'm sure, for that. Up next, we have Krista Steffen to speak about teaching astronomy with Bruce.
So most recently, I think Bruce and I have had interactions more with our rather informal beer club. But I did first get to know him through the astronomy community. Now, we have heard about Bruce as a family man, a husband to Anna, a father to Kevin, a brother to his siblings, and a friend, a hockey fan, an amateur astronomer, a kind and gentle person, and a nature lover. But, I was very touched when Anna asked me to come and talk to him a little bit as a teacher. So Bruce and I we co-taught the introductory to astronomy class here, starting around 2007, and continuing for more than a decade. Now, I had to look up the date because normally I would just kind of glance over and say, okay, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong on this. And he would let me know. Now, I say we co-taught, but we weren't teaching. Bruce always considered those classes as sharing knowledge, not teaching. And he would enjoy learning things from the class as much as he would enjoy talking about what he was passionate about. Remember one time he got into a rather extended side conversation with somebody who is learning to sail and had learned stellar navigation. And Bruce was absolutely fascinated about that. And the two of them went off in a corner while I was going through my slides. And they just had this conversation on stellar navigation because Bruce wanted to learn all about that. We'd always start off the class, the very first session, by asking, trying to get to know everybody. And so we'd ask everyone to talk about just one astronomy related thing that they had seen that most excited them. And in the spirit of sharing, we also described something for us personally. For Bruce, he said his was being outside of the city and watching a meteor storm. So it wasn't something that required a lot of expensive equipment, a lot of expensive travel, just a lawn chair and a dark sky and an appreciation of the beauty of nature. When he was, and it's something that was accessible to everybody. He would always, when he was giving his presentations, he would always have huge number of slides, but no words on them. They were just pictures and the occasional cartoon thrown in. And he was also always very patient in answering all of the questions. And often he'd have follow-up questions of his own so that, not just to answer the question that was given him, but maybe to expand it. His style was always casual, friendly, engaging, humorous, and he never ran out of things to say. There is a reason why he earned the nickname McCurdy. I could go on. There are so many memories. I could talk about how he memorized my phone number without writing it down. And then later that day, emailed me a picture of the nebula with the same NGC catalog number as my phone number. I mentioned once that my dad had taken his junior high class to the observatory here years before, just in casual conversation. And Bruce then recounted the conversation he had with my dad before he even knew that that person was my dad. He just remembered that encounter just like a picture in his brain. People have mentioned his very broad interest in music. Now, he did once recommend that I go to a Buck 65 performance because he thought I'd really appreciate an artist who could rhyme chainsaw and sang-foi. And I did. I loved it. And of course, it's been brought up a few times, but he also had an incredible love, not just of nature in general, but of animals. And we could spend hours talking about the antics of our pets. A friend of mine, a friend of ours, said, you know what, if you wanted to describe Bruce in 2 words, those 2 words might be understated genius. He never bragged. He never seemed above anything, but it was always there. So I'd just like to say goodbye, Bruce, my friend. I'll see you on the dark side of the moon.
Up next is Frank Florian to speak about astronomy and Bruce.
Hello, everyone. Yes, Bruce McCurdy. When did I meet him? Well, we basically both started here at the same time in 1986. I started as a part-time employee here at the Tells World of Science Edmonton, and Bruce started as a volunteer out at our observatory here under direction of Russ Sampson at the time. And I didn't know Bruce right in '86 that much, but that well. I did see him at the observatory. He was always very helpful and polite, and always very engaging. And he just rattled off numbers left and right, just incredible. Over the years, we actually grew much stronger together. We got to know each other better. In 1991, Bruce took his family to Mazatlan, Mexico, for a total solar eclipse. One of the longest of the 20th century. And it was an incredible experience. I remember Kevin running around, just a little guy back then, and just enjoying the eclipse. I don't know, Kevin, did you see much of the eclipse, or are you just more interested in going out into the ocean there? I'm not sure. But anyway, Bruce was around chasing his son, Kevin, all over the place at that eclipse. Really incredible experience to see that. And of course, I believe that was Bruce's first total solar eclipse. And after that, he wanted to see more. And I'm sure anyone in here, if you've seen one, you want to try to see another one. They're incredible events. So Bruce had this avid interest in looking up at the night sky, sharing his knowledge of what he's been learning in the night sky with anyone that around him that would just be there to kind of listen to him and understand things. Now, over the years, Bruce did so many more things here at the Tells World of Science. Back then, the Edmonton Space Sciences Center, then the Edmonton Space and Science Center, and then the Odysseum, and then Tells World of Science Edmonton. Yeah, it's confusing, I know. But basically, in those years, he became one of our foundation members here for the Edmonton Space and Science Center. He came out for every single astronomical event that we actually had here. Of course, he came to me at one later on and said, Frank, I got to see this lunar eclipse away from bright city lights. Every time I've been here at the Science Center, we got all these bright lights, but I want to go out there and see the stars come out when this total lunar eclipse. I says, yeah, Bruce, you better do that. You've been coming out here for 30 years. You got to get out and actually see one of these things firsthand, where you see the stars appearing up in the night sky during a total lunar eclipse. So the events that we saw together are many and varied. And when I talked to Bruce, what got him started in astronomy like this, he said, Comet Halley. He came by here in 1984, 85 to see Comet Halley through the telescopes here at the Edmonton Space Sciences Center. And he said that was his first peak of wanting to learn more about what's up there in the heavens above us. And that was the spark that introduced him to the Tells World of Science Edmonton, again, back then the Edmonton Space Sciences Center, and his lifelong love of astronomy, and his sharing of that knowledge with the community all around us. He and I did a little road trip as well back in 2008. There was a big fireball scene, and Krista talked about teaching classes with Bruce here. I had them both teaching the Introduction to the Night Sky class. And on that particular night, Bruce was ready to come here to the Tells World of Science Edmonton, and out his big picture window, he saw a flash. Yeah, and it wasn't the flash from DC Comics. It was a flash in the nighttime sky that basically just lit up the entire night sky. And of course, Bruce knew exactly what that was probably going to be, and came into the Tells World of Science Edmonton and started teaching the class. And then, of course, the media started showing up saying, hey, can we interview some people about this bright meteor seen in the sky? And sure enough, Bruce and Krista were there to kind of answer the media questions about what this object was. A pretty cool event. Well, after that, I talked to my boss at the time, George Smith, who was our CEO and president here. And I said, well, I'd like to do this road trip and go out and see if we can find some of these rocks that should have come down, these meteorites from this particular rock that flew through the sky. And of course, I said, hey, do you mind if Bruce joins me on this venture? Because I could really use someone to be moral support going out there. And I want to videotape some of these individuals and that saw the bright fireball from a different location here in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And he said, yeah, go ahead. So Bruce and I got in my old Oldsmobile, and we drove all the way to Lloydminster and started searching around, talking to eyewitnesses, got him talking to one of the ranchers at the time. You'll see a video downstairs in our space gallery of that. And Bruce, again, very thorough in his questioning of the rancher about what they saw. And, and then we basically found out that the University of Alberta, University of Calgary researchers actually found some rocks, and there was going to be a big press release the following day. So we spent the night there in Marsden, Saskatchewan. And we went back to Lloydminster the next day and followed this scrum of vehicles, media, and that to where the University of Calgary researchers thought they found some meteorites. And sure enough, they did find some meteorites. And Bruce and I were there to kind of take a look at these rocks that were found on this frozen over pond. This happened around November 27th, so about a week after the actual fireball event of November 20th. And so we were out there looking for rocks ourselves. We thought, well, let's take a look around. We talked to the rancher, Ian Mitchell, and Bruce and I basically went out there. He said, yeah, go over that way. There's a beaver pond over there. Maybe there's something there. So Bruce and I, trekking through this really high kind of grass and woods of this ranch land. And sure enough, we get to that pond. We start looking around. Okay, I don't see any black rocks here because we're looking for these little tiny black rocks that are these meteorites, these rocks from space from this larger thing that blew up in the Earth's atmosphere. And, I'm just looking around and all of a sudden I see Bruce over there and he's saying, pointing down like this with his mouth wide open, like, right here, Frank. He always called me Frankie, not Frank. So out of all my people, I always call me Frank. He's the one that always called me Frankie. So he said, Frankie, come on over here. So I took a look and sure enough, there was a little rock buried inside or underneath the ice a little bit because there was a bit of a thaw and freeze cycle over the week. And so these rocks themselves embedded into the ice a bit. So we were out there with chisel and hammer, and basically we brought these tools with us because we didn't know exactly, where we'd find these things. And Bruce was out there chipping away, and we had our first meteorite from that Buzzard Coulee fall. We found about 4 rocks in that beaver pond, and we decided we'd go and look around some of the other areas around that. And we're driving down these secondary roads, and Bruce had me stop the car almost every little way that we went down there because, I think I see one. Of course, I didn't realize that they just oiled the secondary roads there, and every rock out there was a black rock. So trying to figure out, what's a meteor, what's not. But sure enough, Bruce was a very intrepid kind of guy. He went out there, he looked, and, we brought magnets with us trying to see if the magnet would actually attach to these little black rocks. And if they did, there could be a meteorite. We went out there and no, we didn't find any more. Eventually it was getting pretty late. So we decided that we'd better go and find a place. So we went back to the Marsden little motel, I guess. Not very big. They didn't have many rooms there, but they had some for Bruce and myself. And we decided after a long day like that, we better go into the Marsden pub. So he and I went into the Marsden pub, and I'm just looking around as usual, kind of oblivious to everything around me. And Bruce is right there with his mouth wide open again, pointing at a table at the pub with this 13-kilogram black rock sitting on the table. And he kind of said, again with his pointing thing, over here. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So there were some individuals from Drayton Valley that were looking around too. They found this 13-kilogram piece, and Bruce and I held that rock, and it was the largest piece of that Buzzard Coulee meteorite. Later on, Bruce and I and a few others, Murray Paulson and his sons, Dr. Doug Hube and others, did go out and look for more meteorites out on those fields out there. And we did find a few here and there. So it was an experience to behold. And of course, Bruce was my partner in crime, trying to find these little black rocks scattered over Saskatchewan, just south of Lloydminster. And it was an experience I'll remember for the rest of my life. And of course, just before Bruce passed away, Bruce did come out and gave me a call on the evening of March 13th and 14th. We were doing an adult night here that night, but it was also the night of a total lunar eclipse. And Bruce, of course, was doing his cult of hockey in that evening. Say, hey, Frank, I can't come out, or Frankie, I can't come out to help you, right early, but I'll come out as soon as I can. And sure enough, the weather was kind of iffy. I said, Bruce, maybe it's not worth our while to come out and open up tonight. It's cold, it's cloudy, maybe it'll clear, maybe it won't, we don't know. But within about an hour talking to him, he came out and helped me open up the observatory, and we had some public come out there in this really cold and kind of miserable condition. And the sky, of course, cleared, and we were able to see the lunar eclipse for a bit. And then eventually we saw the clouds rolling again. They were moving rather quickly, and we decided to call it a night. Bruce went home to his place in Sound Albert, and I went to my place in Castle Downs, and then he'd give me a call, and we'd continue talking, because all of a sudden the sky just cleared up completely. There was no clouds anywhere to be seen. So we got to see the last little bit of this lunar eclipse, and that happened about 2 weeks before he passed. So my recollection of Bruce at that time is that he was always there for us, always there for the public, trying to promote his love for astronomy, his fascination with what's actually out there. and he's going to be sorely missed. He was one I could also always call upon if I needed a helping hand. Always there, always a resource, a valuable resource of information. One of the books that he saw in my office one time when he was here is this one here, Astronomical Tables of the Sun, Moon, and Planets by Jean Muse. It's basically, if you open it up, it's got nothing but numbers in it. But this is what Bruce loved. And in fact, I had an old copy of this in my office. And he said, "Hey, Frankie, how about I give you a new copy of that book, but I'll take your old copy." Why? Because he wanted to basically compare the stuff in that old book to the new book and try to find patterns in nature and how basically how many times, you know, lunar eclipses or solar eclipses would occur for any one place, or again, trying to find kind of patterns in the sky and in nature. So he was a very analytical kind of guy, very smart. If I needed anything, he was the one to help me out. So even today, every time I'm thinking about answering somebody's question, I'll always be thinking about Bruce helping me answer those questions with his vivid recollection of facts, everything from the hockey facts to, again, astronomical facts. We'll surely miss you, Bruce. I love you a lot, buddy, and we had good times together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Frank. And it's now time for Bob Gyring to play a musical piece, Jumbo Sky.
Check. Is it coming through? Good. Okay. Yeah, the thing about coming on late in the program is everybody's pretty well said everything that I was going to say. I met Bruce, got to be 30 years ago, when my wife and I joined the Royal Astronomical Society, Sherry Lynn, and found out very quickly he was a Renaissance man. I mean, he seemed to be dabbling into everything and not just superficially. Anyway, he was wonderful. And I was a songwriter, and shortly after being involved with the RASC, a lot of astronomical metaphors were coming into my music, and this was one that Bruce particularly liked, called Jumbo Sky, and I'm happy to do that, and very grateful to Anna and Kevin for allowing me this opportunity. Underneath this dome that's spinning, with our heads silently dreaming, we sit.
Around this fire slowly burning, light returning, sparks leaving it. Our heads roll back in a laugh overhead. The moon leaves through the trees. I feel you here beside me. I feel your hair on my skin. Through all of these endings, we part and begin again. Tucked into her presence, on this earthly bed in jumbo sky. Jumbo sky. Jumbo sky. Jumbo, jumbo sky. Something flashed in the corner of the sky. I just saw an eternity go by. I thread a light through the middle of my eyes. In this place we're all together, traveling and parade. And I look for the familiar, and I'm glad to find you. The tilt of the stars marks the time. All we need is here in jumbo sky. Jumbo sky. Jumbo sky. Jumbo, jumbo sky. Jumbo sky. Thank you. Good.
Thank you for that. You ever see a radio person try to move a microphone to from one spot to the other at a stage? It doesn't work out very well. We're not terribly technical. Fred Furlong, a lifetime friend of Bruce McCurdy, sent a few words. He couldn't be here. He wanted to be. He sent a few words. We have Kevin, who's going to give a few thoughts as well. But I think this is a really nice idea. If there's anybody who wants to come up to the microphone and say a few words about their experience knowing Bruce, you are welcome to do that. We invite you to come up and do it now, and just identify yourself if you would, and then share a story about Bruce. We'd love to hear it. We're sharing stories about somebody we knew and loved very much, so you are most welcome, and you have a captive audience.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Jeske. I've only known Bruce for 24 years, so it seems like I'm the new guy here. I've known Bruce since 2001, and my wife and I joined the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. During that time, we were the librarians. And so we'd get books in from a publisher, and we got this book, we got a duplicate of this book that was nothing but a table of numbers. And we knew exactly who to give it to because we would give it to Bruce, because he would read this like a novel and extract the patterns out of the numbers. And I never realized that that might be the same book that he gave to Frank. Frank, are you able to pull up the picture of Bruce with the horseshoe magnet? So I was looking at this picture, and the picture on the right is Bruce holding a magnet, and he would be testing the rock in his right hand to see if it was magnetic and potentially a meteorite. But what struck me was his toque that says CKUA. And I know he was an avid listener of CKUA. And he told me once when CKUA went off the air, he would continue to listen to the radio station. And the only thing that was left was a transponder beep. And so he would drive around the city listening to CKUA, and all he heard was beep, beep, beep. I've been a volunteer at the observatory since 2001. I've had a lot of poignant memories from observing, and one of the most poignant memories I have, and I think Bruce would also share the same memory, was August 27th of 2003. And some of you may know that date as the closest approach of Mars to Earth. It wouldn't be that close again until the year 2287. So observing it at that time was a lifetime event that would never happen again. During that week, Bruce and I volunteered all week. During that time, we probably had about 25,000 people come through the observatory. And on August 27th was the night of the closest approach, and it was cloudy. And by the time 1 a.m. came around, we were clouded out and everybody left, and it was just Bruce and I. Being 1 o'clock in the morning, we had a choice. We decided that the closest approach was at 3:42 a.m. And we thought, well, let's give it a try. Let's wait it out and see what happens. And so I didn't realize the opportunity I had, not only to see a once-in-a-lifetime event, but to spend 3 hours alone with Bruce McCurdy talking about probably everything. 3:40 a.m. rolled around, and sure enough, as Frank had also described, the clouds parted, Mars appeared. We both grabbed a telescope. I grabbed the one that you can see on screen right there. Bruce had another one. And for 12 minutes, we watched Mars. And then at 3:52 and 10 seconds, the clouds closed up, and that was it. And the most important thing, I think, was for Bruce, it was probably just as important for him to have a chance to either see a lifetime event or have a null result. Either would have been probably just as good. So it's quite remarkable that everything that I've seen, or all of my memories that I have of Bruce, and I wouldn't say this normally, are completely congruent with everything I've seen tonight. So my experiences of Bruce McCurdy are reflected in this afternoon. So I just want to thank everyone for sharing their memories, because it sounds like those are my memories too. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean, Bruce's nephew. I don't have a story about my Uncle Bruce, but I'm going to call on the spirit of my wife and kids to be here with me. I'm going to sing a song that was written by the late Chief Gordon August Sr. Out of the Nechanoth region in BC. And it's a song that was sang by a young man, so the story goes, as he was leaving his village because he was going to a neighboring village and marrying the chieftain's daughter. And he was leaving his family behind, and he knew he probably wouldn't see them again. It was a long journey. And so it's a song of parting. Walk we love, 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 walk we love. Wakula, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey. Wakula, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey. Wakula.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm probably the rare example that unfortunately never got to meet Bruce in person. But I've always followed sports for as long as I can remember. And growing up in the city my entire life, there are a few names that would stand out in following sports, and one of them very obviously was Bruce. And I think the one thing that stood out to me the most was what everyone has described in his sports writing, is that he was always very fair and specific with the points he would make. He was always, it seemed like he was always doing his best to understand the players and their unique skill sets and how they could contribute to the success of the team. That everyone was brought in for a reason and would have an ultimate purpose to serve on a potential championship winning team, especially in recent years. And I'd say the other thing that stood out to me, of course, was the organization. Now, he was the only one in the cult of hockey game grades who would sort the players out by their number. And so whenever I've worked a hockey game for the Nadukes or for another local youth team, I've always written out the stats, written out the players by their jersey number, because that was one of my favorite things about Bruce's writing. And not long after he passed away, was when I was officially hired by the oil rig fan site. And if Bruce obviously would believe in like magical occurrences, the unique nature of astronomy and everything, it kind of felt like the stars aligned perfectly. And so when I accepted that job, and every article that I write now, I'm always reflecting on how Bruce would write for the cult of hockey. And every article that I write now, it's analyzing the data, analyzing each play in the game that happens, and realizing that there's true meaning to everything that goes on a game. There's a player contributing in a way that you might not otherwise realize. And so that's one of the things I'm the most thankful for, is that even though I unfortunately never got to meet Bruce, his impact, what I learned from following Cult of Hockey game grades, will stick with me forever in my writing. And as a tribute, I will forever have saved on my phone his game grades from Sam Gagne's 8-point night, because a lot of people think that it must have been one of the greatest games ever played. But in reality, as he would state early on that article, they were all over the place, because as much as the Oilers got on offense, they gave up the other way. So I will forever have that saved, and I will forever be grateful to Bruce for having an impact on my sports writing career. Thank you.
If you still want to come up, you can. We have somebody in the audience who would like to speak, say a few words.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything because I have Parkinson's and I'm kind of shaky, and my family will be sitting in horror over there. But I want to say something about Bruce. The first time I met him, I was horrified. And I wanted to get back on a plane and go home. And Dino's fault for making me remember this, that he was standing in the window of 122A Street with that, what do you call it, a Sousa? This bloody great instrument around him. And I thought, I'm here for 3 weeks, staying with somebody who plays that. And I'd rather go home. I kind of got to like Bruce a little bit over the years, and we became extremely good friends. I'm married to Margaret McCurdy, and I met Bruce, that was 72. We've traveled around Europe, and he also appreciated that the Welsh and Irish bring a certain dark humor to occasions like this, and that's the first bit of dark humor that was Bruce with that Sousa. And Dino, you live in my memory forever for doing it. The other one, I told Bruce a story about sport and black humor. And it may be tasteless, but it's the sort of thing that would happen at an Irish wake. The national game in Wales is rugby. And they were playing England, which is always something of a tense moment. And many years ago, you could buy your own seat in the stands, and you got to pay a ticket price for each game, but you had a seat for life. And so everybody sitting in the row knew each other. And one game, there was an empty seat. So the fellow says, "Where's your wife then?" "Oh, she died." "Oh, that's very sad. Couldn't you have got somebody to come to the game with you?" "No, they're all at her funeral." The end.
Yeah. Anybody else? Going once? Okay. We're good? Do you want to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't see me at all. I'm 6'5". My name is Dr. Chris Hurd. I'm a professor and curator of meteorites at the University of Alberta. And I just want to say, I'll add a little bit more to what Frank described about the Buzzard Coulee meteorite and Bruce's role. And I wanted to say that of the 4 pieces that they collected that day, the biggest one, of course, is here, right, Frank? But the others are in the U of A collection, and they were the first ones that we were able to get to study.
But this speaks to kind of the legacy of these sorts of activities, because what we did with those samples is we tried out something new that we hadn't tried before. I won't go into the details. It's a bit inside baseball, as they say, or inside hockey. But what we did was try something new. And then with those samples to sort of see kind of what was put on the samples, contaminated onto the samples after they fell in that beaver pond. And we did that, and then we kind of left it for a while. And then literally 10 years later, after that Buzzard Coulee event, we got some more samples, and we had an idea to do that again. Samples that were collected from the field over several years. Murray Paulson and others had collected them. And then I had a really keen student come work with me, and she wrote up the results. And the results are now published in the scientific literature. And they include, of course, as we do in our scientific literature, acknowledgments to Murray and Frank, but Bruce in particular. And so there's another bit of a legacy that's there for future generations to wonder at as a result of something that Bruce was directly involved in. So thank you.
Anybody? All right. I think that's a very novel idea, just to have people come up and share experiences. Honestly, everything I know about Bruce McCurdy, I don't think we mentioned Stan Musial, the St. Louis Cardinals, and everything else I think we've mostly covered. Kevin's going to come up and say a few words. First, though, I want to read email that was sent to us from Fred Furlong, great friend of Bruce in a hockey pool for 700 years. He says, sadly, I cannot attend the celebration of Bruce's life. With thanks to Anna and Kevin and Alan, I would like to add a few words of my own about my dear friend, Bruce. I first met Bruce in St. John's when I was hanging out with his older brother, Dave. We met at their family home, and Bruce and I made an immediate connection, baseball. I had a tabletop card game called APBA, A-P-B-A. It's a brilliant game. I know it's cards and it's nerdy, but it's a brilliant game. Bruce was enthralled by it. Maybe it was the numbers, the mathematics of chance. A few years later, I moved to Edmonton and made contact with Bruce. We soon found we had another great connection, most notably hockey and music. After a couple of years of going to WHA games, Bruce, I, and another friend from St. John's, Bob Davis, decided to get in on the ground floor. We bought WHA season tickets so we could get seats for the undoubtful arrival of the NHL, E1412, E1413, and E1414. Three young men entered hockey heaven, seats in Oilers Corner in row 14 of the NHL. Seeing the Cups at home, the unbelievable night Gretzky broke the 50 and 50 record, and many more treasured hockey memories. What a treat. But you all know the rest of Bruce's hockey story. Suffice to say, it was great fun going to hockey games with Bruce. Sitting next to a hockey encyclopedia was also a treat. One of the other interests we shared was music. Young fellows from St. John's were treated to live music in Edmonton that we would never have seen in St. John's. Bruce and I went to many concerts together, attended the same concerts over the years. It'll come as no surprise to any of you that one of Bruce's favorite bands or songs was by one of his favorite bands, Genesis. The song Watcher of the Skies must have been written for Bruce. Give it a listen. We enjoyed many concerts together. One of Bruce's favorite all-time shows happened before I went to Edmonton. Dave, his brother, took him to hear Procol Harum performing with the Edmonton Symphony. Sharing it with his brother was the thing that made it so special. Listening to that album and closing my eyes, I imagine Bruce and Dave sitting in the balcony. It must have felt like paradise to them. I can hear them laughing and clapping. And then there was Bruce, the watcher of the skies. One of the greatest and fondest memories is the day he handed me a rock and said it was part of a meteorite that he and friends tracked down in Saskatchewan. Bruce had seen it falling from the sky through his living room window. It was really heavy, and I said so. And Bruce said, yes, it's also older than Earth. That's also really heavy. We laughed and laughed. Even with his serious love of astronomy or of anything, Bruce found time to laugh. Friend, husband, father, brother, fan, writer, astronomer, road trip partner, mathematician, nature lover. Bruce was so wonderful in all of this, and that was never in doubt. Beautiful. Well, I will tell you that I knew Bruce McCurdy well, but now I know him even better. Now I'm going to ask on Kevin McCurdy, who's got a combination slideshow, I believe, music presentation, and he will wrap up our program this afternoon. Kevin McCurdy. I've stolen his speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to thank everybody for bearing with us as we work through a couple of technical challenges and through just a little bit of an extended program over what we were originally planning. And I've already broken from my script, so there's that too. The last time I stood in this room, it was full of people, was over 20 years ago. One of those people, unsurprisingly, was my dad. I was presenting a constellation of the month to the members of the Edmonton RASC, Canis Major, the greater dog, if memory serves. I remember telling some corny dad joke he suggested about Sirius, the brightest star in the constellation, being the brightest dog we'd ever seen. Groans were had all around. It's a memory that stayed with me 2 decades later. I can say that about a lot of things involving Bruce McCurdy. I'll be saying that about memories of my father for the rest of my life. You see, the hardest part about planning this event has been, how do you write a speech you've never wanted to? This is the one moment in my life that I've truly dreaded. I've dreaded it because it would mean that one of my closest friends was gone from my life forever. It turns out the plan was to have him leave in an instant, one moment here, the next gone, with an absolute chasm in its wake. Dad was such a central pillar to who I am as a person. Every aspect of me contains something of him. How do you capture that? How does one convey the gravity of that kind of influence? I have some ideas, but none of them do true justice to the man who was my father, one of my best friends, and an ever rare trusted confidant. He was always there, not just for me, but anyone who needed someone to talk to or confide in. Bruce was one of the kindest people I've ever had the privilege of knowing. As I grew up, I spent time with him in lots of situations where he was volunteering for the RASC or just J-to-J interactions in general. He was a grand master at finding the middle ground. He was able to strike up a conversation and find commonality with just about everyone he met. It was one of his greatest gifts, but he had lots more. He was an avid astronomer, hockey analyst, sports watcher, gifted mathematician, animal lover, and lifelong fan of all things music. He was a devoted friend, family man, husband, and father. Over the years, I experienced the full gamut of Dad's various hobbies and clubs. I was a member of the RASC with him for several years in my early and mid-teens. I remember us traveling to the St. John's School for Boys for an astronomy workshop, which was a weekend-long event. On the way there, in the dead of winter, we pulled up to a beautiful snowy owl that was just chilling in the middle of the fresh snow on the road. Dad loved all things animals and nature, so we just stopped and watched this gorgeous bird for 5 to 10 minutes before we carefully passed it and were on our way. It was a very dad experience, just sitting in the middle of nowhere, Alberta, but taking the time to stop and appreciate life in all its forms. He was a lover of animals, especially cats and dogs, and we had both most of my life. There was not a dog or a cat on the planet that did not like my dad. He would often drop by our apartment just to say hi to our cats and dogs and fish, and he would stop by to say hi practically every dog he would run into on his daily walks. And both Mom and I frequently received pictures, whether of wildlife or natural beauty he came across. One of the last pictures he ever sent to me was a picture of a downy woodpecker that he had convinced to land on his finger during one of these walks. It's an incredible shot and really speaks to the purity of his soul. He was also deeply fond of cat memes and representations in media. That's one frickin' nice kitty right there, famously said by Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys, was particularly hilarious to both of us. Speaking of hilarity, the one thing I remember about him most was his laugh. We watched hours of George Carlin HBO specials and shared a mutual love of sharp, often wordplay-driven humor, something Dad was especially fond of. These created innumerable inside jokes and catchphrases that we would often use to cheer the other up, or when one of us was reminded of it by some unrelated event. We shared countless hours of laughter together, which was possibly the greatest therapy available. He was a lover of sports, football, baseball, snooker, cricket, soccer, and hockey, to name a few. There was nearly always some kind of sport on TV and some papers lying about with the score from the previous night or some printed analytics. He especially loved hockey. It didn't matter if it was minor hockey, collegiate level hockey like the Golden Bears, minor league hockey, or the NHL, or the various iterations of the national teams. He would watch and analyze thoughtfully. He had superb understanding of the sport, which he shared with the world over hundreds of articles and 2 decades of writing both as an amateur and professional. He was a veritable walking encyclopedia of Oilers history, things like timestamps of goals, scores of games, and key sequences of events that changed momentum. It didn't matter. His ability to recall minute details and in some ways, more importantly, the emotional atmosphere surrounding those events made him one of the greatest storytellers of the region. He was truly gifted in this regard, and I miss conversations with this level of detail on a daily basis. I have a clip from a podcast recorded late in his life where he talks about enjoying the process of building a winning team and not just the win itself, which I think speaks to how he viewed sport in general as more than just winning it all. We're going to play that clip for you now.
So, I mean, be thankful for what we've got, and it's every right to expect more, but enjoy the process, the build, and the ultimate when they do ultimately win the championship. When you've been building for a while, it's just so satisfying. Man, May 19th, 1984, I'll never forget it, how great that felt after following that team, game after game for 5 years in the NHL by then. And, it's just, that's the end goal, but the process itself is to be relished. And let's enjoy what we've got, which is fabulous hockey gifts. And good night.
Part of Dad's success as a hockey analyst was that he was one of the most gifted mathematical minds I've ever known. He had an ability to see patterns in numbers unlike anything I've ever seen. He loved number sequences like the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. He was often able to translate these numbers to real-world occurrences and representations in nature. The number of petals on flowers, the number of leaves on a stem, pine cones, etc., were often representations of Fibonacci numbers, things most people did not see. The same applied to his astronomical and hockey analytics endeavors, where he was able to find and describe repeating meaningful patterns in a way very few can. Math and numbers were a huge component of his life and contribute to another one of his core hobbies, music. His musical knowledge and breadth of exposure to virtually all genres and regions were extensive. He had an affinity for odd time signatures and rhythms, vastly preferring complex, eclectic pieces to mainstream music, which should come of little surprise. We shared a number of mutual loves in this regard, whether it was Tool, Golden Earring, Peter Gabriel, or Eminem, or in something completely off the beaten path. We spent a lot of time listening to a wide range of music together. I didn't always share some of his more eclectic tastes, but I was exposed to a variety of music that few could rival, and the experiencing during the process changed my life forever. One of my all-time favorite stories of Dad was the time he won tickets to go to the original Heritage Classic in 2003. It's a fantastic summary of my dad in a nutshell, and he conveniently blogged about it. So rather than recall, I'll let him tell the story. Friday, November 21st, 2003. Earlier in the week, a close friend had given me the heads up to the Heritage Classic contest on CBC Radio 1's Radioactive show. They had a pair of tickets for the person who could produce the earliest ticket from an Oilers NHL game. Val thought of me immediately, and knowing that I'm a CKUA guy, not to mention a hockey guy who didn't yet have tickets, took the trouble to call. So I trundled into CBC's new downtown studios with my entire 47 game set of ticket stubs from season 1, 5 exhibition games, 40 regular season games, 1 international with the Moscow Dynamo, and 1 playoff game. I went to them all. They were one particularly interested in game 1, October 13th, 1979, which was of course included. As luck had it, within a minute of my arrival, an elderly lady came in with a ticket from that same game, and they said that we were the first 2. So they interviewed both of us on air and decided that a tiebreaker would be a live on-air Oilers trivia contest on Friday afternoon. I was to face off against the lady's son, likely to be about my age, and possibly others who brought their stubs before the deadline, with the winner to receive a brace of tickets to the game. The CBC contest was exciting to say the least, starting with the adventure of trying to park downtown with all the meters offline during rush hour. I was, as usual, pushing the envelope re-timeliness, and traffic had been terribly slow, so I sent my son to the studio to tell him that while I searched for a parking spot. I tried to rush into the library parkade, but miscalculated by a block and went down the up ramp. The attendant came rushing out, flailing both arms, giving me the what for, making me back all the way up the narrow ramp. I finally got parked and hustled off to the studio. By now, my pulse rate was about 200 beats per minute, but I finally got into the studio with time to catch my breath. The other guy was late. Turns out there were just 2 of us standing on the stage in front of a live and large studio audience. Live music, Captain Tractor, party atmosphere, no pressure. Yeah, sure. Upon introduction, I did a pirouette showing the proud number 99 on the back of my Oilers sweater, which may have won me a few fans. The contest was 3 periods of 2 trivia questions each, 6 questions in all. I played it just like the Oilers, skating out to an excellent first period and taking a 2-1 lead thanks to my knowledge of Paul Coffey's records, before completely tanking the second to fall behind 3-2 and get myself seriously behind the 8 ball. I was stumped by consecutive questions. Where was the 2000 NHL All-Star Game? The tenuous connection to the Oilers being that was when the NHL officially retired Gretzky's number. I remembered Canada, but I guessed Vancouver when I should have guessed Toronto. And where did Mike Comrie play during college hockey? Michigan, I began, and the host started to congratulate me before I foolishly finished my sentence with state. Wrong. Comrie went to Michigan, his contemporary Sean Horkoff to Michigan State. I lumped the 2 together. I could have told Horkoff beat Comrie for the 1999-2000 CCHA scoring title by 1 point, but I couldn't remember which guy went to which school. As it turns out, I knew the answers to every last one of my opponent's questions, but not these 2. So when he got set up like a sweet Gretzky feed to start the 3rd period, how many goals did Gretzky get in his record year? It was 4-2, and I had no room to maneuver. I had to get my 2 questions right, then hope he missed, then win it in OT. True story. At this moment, my mind flashed back to one of my favorite Oiler games of all time, Game 2 of the 1988 blowout of the Flames series, when the Oilers themselves trailed by 4-2, only to pull it off a comeback and complete it in overtime on a memorable goal by Wayne Gretzky. Oilers 5, Calgary 4. Visualization works. That's pretty much how this one played out. I answered a couple of fairly tough ones. Who played the most games and goals for the Oilers? Bill Ranford, 449. And who had the first shutout for the Oilers? Eddie Mio. I responded, biting my tongue on the 3-0 over Hartford, December 9th, 1979. At this point, it didn't matter what I knew. There were no extra points for know-it-alls. And it was out of my hands. And here it came. Who scored the Oilers' first hat trick? B.J. McDonald, my mind screamed. At home and the first hat trick on the road. Egads, I'm thinking. 2 clues. I'm dead. And of all the guys to beat me, it was my old favorite B.J. But my opponent asked him to repeat the question and was clearly stumped. Finally, Wayne Gretzky, ? Good guess, but wrong. And off to OT we go. Once again, I got the first choice, and I answered an easy one about who the Oilers' first playoff series was against, Philadelphia. My opponent was asked who led the Oilers' playoff scoring that spring in 2003. Guessed Ryan Smith instead of the aforementioned Sean Horkoff, and I had won. 5-4 in overtime. Felt just as good as that shorthanded Gretzky slapper over Vernon's shoulder. There was quite a big cheer from the audience as I received a pair of the hottest tickets in town. this town had seen in a long time and held them triumphantly aloft. I showed one to my son and said, "For you." My opponent got a nice bunch of prizes too, including a new Gretzky DVD, but I had what I wanted. A few complete strangers came to shake my hand. My son and I celebrated by heading to City Hall to see the NHL exhibit there. 18 beautiful trophies in the silverware collection, including spectacular new Rocket Richard trophy, which was another gorgeous work of art. I visited Gretzky wing of the Art Ross and Hart trophies and saw the inscriptions of Grant Fuhr on the Vezina, Mark Messier on the Smythe, Paul Coffey on the Norris, Jari Kurri on the Bing, and Edmonton Oilers again and again on the Clarence Campbell Bowl and on the first two plates of the President's Trophy. It had been a pretty spectacular 25 years for NHL hockey here in Edmonton, especially the first dozen. Stanley was there too, but roped off and almost impossible to read at a distance, although very easy to admire. They also had some really nifty Hockey Hall of Fame displays. Frank Mahovlich's rookie sweater, the unridged puck which Nell's Old Poison Stewart scored his 200th goal, and most interestingly to me, Bill Jernan's old goal gloves, another in a long line of great Montreal netminders. Jernan was the only ambidextrous goalie in NHL history. When he had time to prepare for an angled attack, he switched the stick to his short side, so both gloves were a weird combination of blocker and catcher. It seems to have been a good strategy. In Durnan's short 7-year career, he got his own name inscribed on the Vezina 6 times. Finally, leaving the milling throng at City Hall, we found the right hole to depart the parkade and hit Tan Tan Oriental Noodle House for a small celebratory feast, Vietnamese style. Saturday would be another busy day. I want to take a moment to thank the staff of the TELUS World of Science Edmonton, in particular Frank Florian and the wonderful events team, for making this day possible. I'd like to thank everyone who spoke today, as well as some special guests from local radio and sports that cover the Oilers. I also want to give a special thank to my mom, Anna, for countless hours of logistics, making sure that everything was sorted, for fighting through the grief and loss to help bring us all together today. I'd like to thank my friend Ivan Filipov for helping me get home in one piece on the journey from Las Vegas when everything happened. And I'd like to thank my wife, Rose, for being with me and family and making the hardest call of her life to tell me. Finally, my family and I are grateful to all of those that are here today, either in person or virtually, to celebrate Dad's life. I know everybody is so busy with their personal and professional lives these days. He would have been absolutely blown away by the responses we've received over the past couple of months. I've answered hundreds of texts, DMs, private messages, and emails of support. It's been truly an eye-opening experience. I want to thank Fred for taking the time to put his thoughts to paper earlier. It's actually kind of fitting that we heard from Fred, and I'll tell you why. Deep in my inbox is a message almost 20 years old titled Musical Postlude from Dad. In it, he gave instructions for some music to be played at his eventual celebration of life. Some pieces you've already heard today, Cymbeline by Lorena Kennett and New World by the Straubs being two of them. Attached to said email was another email between Dad and Fred where Dad talks about musical philosophy and one of his favorite bands. I'm going to read an excerpt for you as I think it's both profound and a glimpse to how deep his mind went. I know it's not just what the music is about, it's about the music. Ideally, these two aspects go hand in hand. The music is great and it means something. To me, Radiohead meets this challenge brilliantly. For example, the Kid A tune, How to Disappear Completely, referenced above, is an absolute gem, which I consider one of the greatest songs I have ever heard. As the song crescendos into its climax, it seems both the singer and the band behind him somehow phase themselves right out of existence. It's one of the songs that I have pre-requested to be played at my funeral, only in part because I will want to have the last laugh, even though it's not exactly funny, as my cracked little soul is consigned to memory. With that in mind, I think it's fitting that we close this celebration with none other than How to Disappear Completely by Radiohead, for no other reason than to give him the last laugh, even though most of us might disagree with how cracked his soul was. I want to leave you with a parting thought. It doesn't matter what your interests are. The one thing in this room that has in common is our lives were impacted by Bruce McCurdy. He united all of us here today, whether his connection to each of you was through music, hockey, astronomy, or something else entirely. Whether he was connected to you as a friend, colleague, sibling, relative, husband, or father. In some perceptible way, we are all here and changed forever because of his intelligence, compassion, wit, warmth, and light. When we selected Dad's urn, we selected this one because his soul would be forever encased in the oil drop floating amongst the galaxies. So, Dad, I hope you're enjoying your time amongst the stars, hanging out with the hockey gourds. I'll keep Never in Doubt going. It's in good hands. I'm sorry we couldn't finish the job this year. It has been my utmost privilege to have known you and had you as a father as we shared our little slice of cosmic space-time. For the last time until I see you next, catch you later, Dad. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming and sharing your afternoon with us. And without further ado, How to Disappear Completely. That concludes the celebration for today. Everybody's welcome. There's food and beverages out in the space gallery, as well as down the hall in the learning areas. Mom and I will be mulling about. Feel free to stop by and say hi. And thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and celebrate Bruce McCurdy's life with us. Thank you. Oh yeah, don't forget to sign the guest book. It's what Dad's earned.